Hello, this is Kurush Karimi. I'm going to start translation lessons for those who are interested in learning how to translate from English to other languages, provided that the other language is their mother tongue or they know it native-like. The first translation lesson is to know that structure of sentences in different languages can be different. The usual sentence structure in English language is subject, verb, object, where subject comes first, verb follows it, and object comes last. This is the structure of a usual simple English sentence. This structure might or might not happen in other languages. So translators must be aware of the structure of the language they are translating from or to. This point is mostly neglected by inexperienced translators. They unconsciously use the structure of the language they're translating from into English or from English to that language. And this distorts the naturalness of the translation. And the translation sounds like odd. Let's begin with the definition of translation, first provided by Eugene Nida. The definition of translation says translating consists in reproducing in the receptor language the closest natural equivalent of the source language message, first in terms of meaning and secondly in terms of style. This definition is generally accepted as one of the most comprehensive definitions of translation so far. Have a closer look at the definition and you'll find 5 important points in this definition. The first one is reproducing the message. As the definition says, the translator is supposed to reproduce the message, not the words, not the structure, but the message. It means the words and structure of the source language or the first language. It means the language from which translator is translating should not be given importance, but the message, which is the meaning or the concept actually. This is what must be reproduced in the receptor or the target language. The definition also says that equivalent must have some qualities, one of them being closest. Usually there are more than one equivalent for a word or a phrase in the target language for the one which is said in the source language, but usually one of them is the closest in the receptor language vocabulary or structure. That is what closest equivalent means. This is one of the points which differentiate a good translation from a bad one or a bad translation from a worst. The other quality an equivalent must have is naturalness. By natural, the definition means being common. It can be inferred from the point that among equivalents which may be found in the receptor language or the target language, only one of them is usually the most used one among the speakers of the language. This equivalent is what is referred to as natural. Natural means something which sounds familiar to the speakers of that language, not, as I said already, odd. So far we talked about the qualities of equivalent. Now let's talk about the equivalent itself. The term equivalent, which is a matter of importance and interest, has to be considered upon. Equivalent indicates that the term must exist in the language to which translation is being done. So translators cannot coin or create the equivalent in most of the cases. Rather, they have to choose or look up the existing equivalent from among the ones which are available in the receptor language. Another point must also be taken into account here, and that is the meaning of the words in isolation is not that important. But what a word means in a certain context must be attended to, and this is what translation is. The last slide deals with the last point. First, in terms of meaning. Secondly, in terms of style. It means that in non-literary translations, and some exceptions that we will talk about later, translators must give priority to reproducing the meaning of the source language text, then to the style. As it comes from this part of the definition, meaning has priority over style. I reiterate again that this applies in non-literary translations. This point applies at both word and sentence levels. As the last word, I'll tell you that meaning, or the concept, the idea, is what translators have to translate from one language to another. Words in isolation, phrases alone, and even sometimes chunks and clauses might be misleading and lead to bad translations.